Hi guys, welcome to Driven, powered by Petronas Dynamic Diesel Euro 5 with ProDrive and Petronas Premix.
In this episode, we're featuring the new 5th generation Honda CR-V.
And its closest rival is this, the Mazda CX-5. It's a brand new 2nd generation model and it's expected to give the Honda CR-V a very good run for its money.
And me, I brought along a proper wild card here, the Peugeot 3008. Forget the weird old one, this new version means business, and to me it's a proper alternative to these two mainstream SUVs.
Yes, we could have gone with the Volkswagen Tiguan, but if you're going for a left field option, we think the 3008 is the most standout candidate. After all, if you're going for a change, you better go big or go home.
The CX-5 is the CR-V's most obvious mainstream rival, but the Mazda is a very different machine compared to the Honda. They take fundamentally contrasting approaches to making a family SUV.
The CR-V, well, it's not only seen as the ideal SUV in Malaysia, because for a long time now, it's the ideal family car period, regardless of body type. As its rivals get stronger, so has the Honda.
Interestingly, all three models were launched within the past 1 year. So they're all new, it's a level playing field, there's no advantage or disadvantage. And today we'll also find out if the Honda CR-V is still the best family SUV that you should get, and we'll give you a clear-cut answer.
Along the way, we'll find out which one's the most practical, which one's the fastest, best handling, and of course, the most economical in this group.
Okay, let's not waste any time now and find out which one of these three SUVs is the right one for you. Ready guys?
Yeah.
Let's get it on.
We've chosen what we think are the best variants of each model here. For the CR-V, it's of course the top spec 1.5-litre turbo premium two-wheel drive version, as it's the only one that comes with Honda sensing. It costs the most to buy among the three here, but not by much.
For the CX-5, our pick of the range is the 2.2 Skyactiv D turbo diesel two-wheel drive variant. It's 10k cheaper than the all-wheel drive version, but with the same exact equipment. That also puts it pretty much on equal ground against the CR-V.
Peugeot, meanwhile, doesn't have the luxury of offering so many variants, so the 3008 range tops out with the 1.6 THP Allure that we have here. It's more affordable than both its rivals here by a full 10,000 ringgit, but in turn, it also loses out on active safety features, which is a shame.
See the cars in the flesh, however, and you would think it's the Peugeot that is the most expensive car here. I love the way it looks, it's so modern and chic, and the sharp lines go so well with the muscular body. I like the interplay of colours here too. Gloss black, body colour and chrome. In terms of style, I think this is right up there with the Lexus NX. If fashion is your thing, you can forget the rest. This is the SUV for you.
The CX-5, on the other hand, is not as flashy, but the thing is, it is not boring at the same time. There are three things that I really love about the front end of the CX-5. Number one is the large grille that you have over here. Number two is this wide chrome bar that you have here. And number three are the razor sharp headlights. It gives it a very dynamic look. When you have a quick look on the car, it'll make you think that it's a concept car. And there's also another thing. People think that when you drive an SUV, it'll make you look old. But I can guarantee to you that driving this will make you look young. Now at the back, some might argue that the taillights look a bit too small for the car, but I really think that they look proportionate over here. Plus the taillights, they give a very futuristic kind of look. Now I would like to bring your attention to this wheel over here. Now you're looking at a 19-inch wheel, fitted with premium tires of course. The problem is the wheels look too small. For example, the Honda CR-V, it uses an 18-inch wheel, which is smaller, but it looks bigger. So the reason why it is smaller here could be because of the design. It looks a bit too dark. So overall, that's the only complaint that I have in terms of the CX-5's exterior looks.
Speaking of size, the CR-V is definitely the biggest car here, and you can clearly tell just by looking at it. It's 50mm longer than the Mazda CX-5 and about 150mm longer than the Peugeot 3008. That is a lot of extra length. And you know what they say? Size does matter. But overall, the design is a love it or hate it affair, especially with the Volvo-like LED taillights. Personally though, I kind of like how it looks because it is by far the most premium looking CR-V we've had to date.
Tell you what, if premium is what you want, this is it. The Peugeot looks and feels like a proper premium car in here. And I say this both in terms of perceived build quality as well as design. This wraparound cockpit looks like it belongs from a sci-fi movie, and it has genuinely unique elements too, like this weird gear selector, fabric inserts on the dashboard, and small square steering wheel. And of course, the pièce de résistance, the iCockpit digital instrument cluster. Now this is even more impressive than Audi's virtual cockpit. It's not all perfect of course, because the ergonomics are truly and deeply French. Take the aircon controls for instance. You need to work both the physical button and the touchscreen. For something that you do very often, that's not good. And let's not forget the silly cruise control stalk behind the steering wheel, right where you can't see them. Well, if love fronts, I suppose?
The Honda is the direct opposite of that, because everything you want is exactly where you'll be able to find them. There's a set of dials and buttons here for the climate control and one more up here for the volume. And the screen itself, the interface is very easy to use, but it's not the best one in this group. Overall, the cabin is not as plush as the other two, but this is by far the most impressive Honda cabin we've had to date. And what it lacks in so-called premiumness, I mean, look at this wood trim. It feels a little bit like the 90s in here. Again, what it's lacking, it makes up for with sheer practicality. There's lots of cubby holes everywhere around the car, and check this out. This huge center console box is so big, it can fit your handbag in there.
Now the Mazda sits somewhere in the middle. It is not as lavish as the Peugeot, but it is better than the CR-V. For example, the door cards over here, the upper part, they are all wrapped in leather, and there are a lot of soft touch points throughout the car, even in the rear cabin. So in terms of build quality, this is top notch. Having said that, the analog meters look really old school now next to the fancy digital dials of the other two cars here. And the center armrest box is really small for an SUV. Controls wise, Mazda has taken a very minimalist approach, which I really like. The entire thing is right up there with BMW's iDrive. It uses a knob as well as a touchscreen, but once you start driving, the touchscreen will be disabled because Mazda thinks that it would distract the driver. Moving on to the rear, now space has not been the CX-5's strong suit, in fact for any Mazda. Now this model is a bit bigger than the one it replaces, but it's still not that great. Finally, we have aircon vents at the rear. The only thing is that it's a bit too low. Another thing is that it has a center hump over here. Whether it's a two-wheel drive or a four-wheel drive version, you still get that. Another thing, the seats. It's actually designed for 2 instead of 3. But one thing I really love is this. The center armrest has 2 USB ports.
The Peugeot is slightly bigger in here with a bit more legroom compared to the Mazda, even though on the outside, this is the smallest car here. The backrest can't be reclined like the other two, but the bench itself, this is the most comfortable one here. As for the floor, it's also the flattest of the group because this car is not designed to have all-wheel drive in any other markets. But other than that, this is not particularly practical because the center headrest is pretty much useless. The center box here juts out so much, if you sit in the middle, you're gonna hurt your shin. And look at this, a 12-volt socket instead of USB chargers for the rear passengers. I mean, last I checked, it's 2018 already.
And here we come to the CR-V's party piece. This car makes the other two feel like Puro Dua Asias back here. I mean, just look at the amount of legroom I have back here. And that, by the way, is my driving position. For families and long journeys, this is easily the most practical option. The seats are well shaped and comfortable. You get nice and big headrest as well, and the backrest reclines a little bit more than in the Mazda. Down here, the floor is not quite as flat as the Peugeot 3008, but when you have a space this big, I really don't think anyone is gonna complain about.
This advantage is carried over to the boot space too, as the CR-V has the biggest, best-shaped cargo bay. At 522 litres, it's just slightly larger than the Peugeot, but fold the rear seats flat and you have a cavernous load bay to carry bulky items. It's also the only SUV here to have a full-sized spare tyre instead of a space saver, as well as a powered tailgate.
The Peugeot is close behind with a 520-litre boot and an adjustable floorboard to carry taller items. The tonneau cover slots in here neatly when not in use too. With the seats folded, the cargo bay isn't quite as deep as the CR-V's, but the 3008 has a neat trick where you can fold the front passenger seat down for the occasional trips down to IKEA.
As for the Mazda, again it comes in last in terms of practicality with just 422 litres of space. That's significantly smaller than its rivals here, and that's with either the seats folded up or down. On the plus side, it does have an advantage of a 40-20-40 split folding seats, so you can carry long items while keeping 4 seats available. It also has a clever tonneau cover that's attached to the tailgate. Now put practicality aside, you'll quickly realize why Mazda is becoming a mainstream brand among automakers right here in Malaysia. They make cars that are nice to drive. So let's start off with the engine first. The CX-5 is offered with 2 petrol options. One is a 2-litre and another is a 2.5. And they are both normally aspirated. But the one that we would recommend would be the 2.2 turbo diesel, which is the one that I'm driving right now. It's definitely, I feel, the best among the 3 cars that we are comparing today. Now, turbo diesels, they have a lot of torque, and all you need to do if you need a bit of power is just step on the gas a bit, and there you go. And this happens in any gear. So there's a lot of torque from down low the rev range. Numbers wise, the CX-5 diesel makes 173 horsepower and more importantly 420 Newton meters of torque. That's way more than the CR-V's 1.5 litre turbo engine, which makes 190 horsepower and 243 Newton meters of torque. Peugeot's long-serving Prince 1.6 THP unit is the least powerful here with 165 horsepower and 240 Newton meters.
Against the clock, we measured the CX-5 to be the quickest car here, taking just 9.1 seconds from 0 to 100. Coming in second was the Honda CR-V, taking 9.6 seconds, while this one is a little further back again. It dips just under the 10-second mark. But all those numbers don't tell the whole story. The Peugeot here may be slowest from 0 to 100, but in everyday driving conditions, it's actually quicker than the Honda CR-V. This is the lightest car here and it really feels it. It takes less of an effort from the engine to move it from a standstill. It's less of a struggle compared to the Honda. And this is a sweet, sweet engine. Just listen to it rev. Yes, it's old by now, but it's still a nice car to drive. In terms of engine and performance, I still rate this higher than Honda's VTEC turbo unit.
When Honda first announced that it was going to introduce a 1.5-litre turbocharged engine to replace the older 2.4-litre engine, a lot of people were skeptical. You know, they'd be asking, hey, big car, small engine, got power one meh? Can move ah? Well, obviously it can, and under full throttle, I might even say that this car is actually pretty fast. But the problem is, when you're driving slowly in traffic, or especially when you're accelerating slowly, the car tends to feel a little bit sluggish, like it's lacking that low-end torque. Personally, it's not a problem for me, but if you put it side by side next to the diesel CX-5, then you're gonna see that this car is actually pretty lethargic. For those of you who are thinking that the CVT is the one to be blamed here, let's not jump the gun because it's actually one of the better built CVTs out there. It's smooth and it doesn't have that rubber band effect or even lag. It also has a stepped function to mimic a conventional automatic transmission. In this regard, I have no complaints whatsoever.
Now the CX-5 is even better. It uses Mazda's 6-speed automatic transmission, which is infamous for being a bit slow. It tries to change gears faster so you can save more fuel. But with a turbo diesel engine, it works perfectly because it has so much of torque, so no matter what gear you're in, you have power already.
The Peugeot also runs a 6-speed automatic gearbox, sourced from Aisin. Here it does the job just fine, but there's always that rubbery feel to the throttle that is typical of automatic Peugeots. It's fine, but it's not great. Also average is the Peugeot's handling. The steering is really quick, and together with this tiny steering wheel, it feels light and darty like a much smaller car. Body roll is also well controlled, especially for an SUV, but it just doesn't feel anywhere near as dynamic or as fun as the Mazda.
On the move, the Mazda CX-5 is quite impressive. It has sharp steering and the body roll is quite minimal as well. So if you're looking for an SUV that is very car-like to drive, this would be it. It's very close to the Mazda 3. But there are two issues that I would like to point out. Number one being the steering wheel is a bit too vague when you're driving on a straight line, say on the highway. And the next one is the brakes. It feels a bit too soft, so you have to go deeper in to get more power out of the brakes. But other than these two issues, the car is very, very enjoyable to drive, and I love it.
The CR-V makes no claim of being a fun car to drive, and the days of everyday Hondas being sporty, well, they're long gone anyway. Compared to the rest, the CR-V has the most body roll, and it's definitely not built to chase up certain cars up gunting, for example. But in terms of stability, high-speed stability especially, the CR-V is definitely among the best up there, and it is surely better than the older CR-V. In essence, this one is geared more towards comfort rather than sporty dynamics. And being a family SUV, I think that should be a priority, right? It's easily one of the most comfortable cars in this group, and through rough potholes and speed bumps, the CR-V is gonna feel the least disturbed here.
When you go faster, it's a different story. Now, the CX-5 generally has a more stiff suspension setup compared to the CR-V. But when you start driving it fast, say above 60 kilometers per hour, you'll notice that the stiff suspension gives you a more planted feel on the road. So you feel a bit more stable. You don't rock as much compared to when you're in the CR-V, for example.
As for the 3008, it's the only one here to have a rear torsion beam instead of independent rear multi-link suspension. Well, by right, you would expect the ride quality to be a little bit crap, but somehow it manages to have the best ride quality, most controlled and best damped suspension here. How Peugeot has gotten the most sophisticated ride quality out of the most basic, cheaper suspension around, well, God knows. On to refinement, the Peugeot again has a very strong showing here. Under full throttle, we recorded the maximum noise level of just 70 dB for the Peugeot, which is quieter than the CX-5's 72 dB. The Honda CR-V is by far and away the loudest at full load at 75 dB.
Yep, Honda's usual issue with subpar refinement continues to affect the CR-V as well. It's not just the engine noise either, which by the way, is really loud. Yeah. And sound insulation from rolling noise, that's severely lacking as well. At a steady cruise of 110 kilometers per hour, again, it's the Honda that's the loudest at a maximum of 70 decibels. The other two registered a similar max of 67 dB, which is a big difference.
Now, Mazda claims that it makes the world's most refined and quietest diesel engines. And yes, I have to agree. The diesel feel in here, it's very quiet. You don't feel the diesel clatter even at idle. The only time you would feel or you'd realize that you're driving a diesel-powered SUV is when you accelerate hard. But then again, it sounds kind of good. Fuel efficiency is one of the most crucial things for family vehicles such as these. Euro 5 diesel is recommended for the CX-5, so we tested it with Petronas Dynamic Diesel Euro 5 with ProDrive. Engineered with learnings from the Dakar Rally, the new generation sulfur-free high-performance clean diesel delivers a smooth drive and superior fuel economy with cleaner emissions. The new formulation is also available in selected stations in Sarawak.
As to be expected, the Mazda CX-5 diesel used the least fuel overall, averaging 15.3 kilometers per litre over everyday driving conditions. Next up was the petrol Peugeot 3008, managing 12.1 kilometers per litre, followed by the larger, heavier Honda CR-V with 11.3 kilometers per litre. This means the diesel Mazda is a good 30% more efficient than its petrol rivals.
Alright, so we covered pretty much all the bases for each of the cars here, so it's time we take turns to see what we like and don't like about the cars. Freeze, you want to take a shot at the CR-V?
Don't go all cocky now, man. But yes, the CR-V is indeed a very well-rounded SUV. But it's the only one here to not have auto up and down functions for all windows. Come on, man, this is supposed to be one of your flagship models. It also comes in last in the traditional Malaysian door slam test. See, doesn't sound anywhere near as solid as the other two. One common complaint is the lack of a 7-seat option for Malaysia, which is available in quite a few other markets. But this time, I think Honda Malaysia made the right choice, because having seen the 7-seater up close, the last two seats are pretty much next to useless and they don't even fold flat.
The Mazda has blind spot monitors, but the Honda offers this lane watch system instead. It gives a clear view of the left side, but no help on the right.
The CR-V is the only one here to have adaptive cruise control. While I don't see this as a safety feature per se, it's a nice convenience feature for highway use.
Mazda didn't market its active safety feature as aggressively as Honda, but this one does come with its own iActive Sense suite. There's no adaptive cruise control, but there's autonomous emergency braking or AEB present in more models instead of the top spec one, just like the CR-V. That to me is more important, and it even comes with this brilliant AEB function when you are in reverse. On to the warranty. The Honda may come with the best warranty coverage here with 5 years and unlimited mileage, but the Mazda counters that with 3 years worth of free service. Not bad. On the flip side, it gets this old school keyless entry compared to the touch sensors that you can find on the other two cars. I mean, come on. It's also the only SUV here that doesn't come with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. In this day and age, that's quite a shame really. The Mazda also has the most expensive road tax at nearly 600 ringgit per annum compared to just 100 on the rest. Well, at least it uses less fuel now, eh?
Now I have to agree that the Peugeot is the best looking car here. It's very Gaia and it's very futuristic looking, but there is one thing that I don't get. This thing that is supposed to cover the exhaust area. What is this lah? Another thing, the display screens. They're very sharp on the inside, but the problem is the moment you put the car into reverse, it's like watching a 3GP video on a 4K screen. Now as usual with French cars, the glove box is tiny. Now this is what I call a lazy left-hand drive to right-hand drive conversion. And another thing is that this is the only car here which has an ISOFIX front seat. But remember, if you want to use a baby seat, please make sure that you turn off the front airbags. And the other thing is that this car also has electric child locks. One thing I do like though are the sequential turn signals. It makes the car look more premium. Nice one, Peugeot.
Okay, so we've covered everything there is to cover, so now it's decision time.
Right? The Honda CR-V is really a complete and capable SUV. It's quick, it's fast, it's comfortable, and on top of all that, it's just the most practical car of the lot.
But it is still loud and it's boring to drive.
And my biggest complaint is that interior. I mean, it's fine in isolation, but put it next to these two, it just feels cheap, man.
That's where the Mazda stands out. The build quality is top-notch and it's even comparable to certain entry-level BMW and Mercedes models. And the driving dynamics, it's very nice to drive, and the engine, especially this 2.2-litre turbo diesel, it's perfect.
Conveniently keeping the part where it's the tiniest on the inside.
That's right. I mean, even the smallest car here, the Peugeot, is more spacious on the inside, you know. And obviously, it's the best looker here by far. It's also the most comfortable, the most refined. It just feels expensive through and through. And it's the cheapest car here, come on.
but the driving is just about average, and the reason why it's cheap is because certain safety features were not spec'd in.
Right, that's true. Then again, every car has its own strengths and weaknesses. Time for the final verdict. Frizz, you gotta take this, man.
Alright. The Peugeot has to come in third place. I mean, we have to be realistic here. It's still very much a left field choice, especially with a big question mark over its brand image and, of course, resale value, especially against these two more mainstream brands. But that's a pity because I think otherwise it's a fantastic car and it's still my personal favorite.
And the Mazda comes in at a very close second, and the main reason why it's not in the number 1 spot is because the practicality from the CR-V is better. But if you're okay with not having a car that has as much space as the CR-V, or if you put driving dynamics above all else, then the CX-5 is the best car for you.
So yes, ladies and gents, the Honda CR-V is once again the top pick for our class. It gets all the important things done just right, especially in the window of being a family-oriented SUV.
So that's it for our episode of Driven, powered by Petronas Dynamic Diesel Euro 5 with ProDrive and Petronas Premix.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.